Long before modern courts, before churches stood in every village, before cities reshaped African life, tradition governed the people. Among the Luo community of East Africa, marriage was never seen as a union between only two individuals. It was a bond between families, between clans, and even between the living and the dead. And when a married man died, his responsibilities did not die with him. His brother or another male relative was expected to step forward and inherit the widow, a practice known as wife inheritance. To some, it was protection, to others, oppression. But to truly understand it, we must return to the beginning. The Luo people are part of the larger Nilotic communities believed to have migrated from regions near the Nile Valley centuries ago. As they settled around Lake Victoria in present-day Kenya, they developed strong social systems rooted in clan identity, kinship, and communal responsibility. In traditional Luo society, family survival depended on unity. Land was inherited through male lineage. Children belonged to the clan of the father, and marriage connected entire generations. When a husband died, his widow was not expected to live alone. She remained part of the husband's homestead, but culturally, a homestead without a man was considered incomplete. This gave rise to the practice known as Tero, or wife inheritance. Usually, the deceased man brother, cousin, or close male relative would symbolically or physically take responsibility for the widow and her children. This inheritance was not originally viewed as romantic love. It was seen as duty, a continuation of the deceased man's role within the family. In many cases, the inheritor would help provide food, security, labor, and social protection. The widow remained connected to the clan, and her children retained their place within the lineage. To outsiders, wife inheritance may appear unusual, but within traditional Luo society, the practice carried deep cultural meaning. First, it was believed to protect widows from abandonment. In ancient times, widows often faced economic hardship after losing a husband. There were few opportunities for women to own land independently. Inheritance ensured survival for both the widow and her children. Secondly, the tradition preserved family lineage. The Luo placed great importance on continuity of the clan. Through inheritance, the deceased man's name and homestead remained alive. In some cases, children born after inheritance could culturally be recognized as belonging to the deceased husband's lineage. Thirdly, wife inheritance had spiritual significance. Traditional beliefs taught that neglecting certain rituals after death could disturb harmony within the family. Some believed a widow needed cleansing rituals before fully rejoining normal community life. Inheritance became connected to these spiritual customs. Finally, the practice reinforced communal responsibility. No widow was meant to suffer alone. The clan was expected to stand with her in many ways. Wife inheritance reflected an African philosophy where community survival mattered more than individual independence. But as Africa changed, traditions once accepted without question began to face criticism. Education, religion, urbanization, and modern law transformed society, and wife inheritance became increasingly controversial. Critics argued that many widows were no longer given real choices. In some situations, women faced pressure from relatives or communities to accept inheritance against their wishes. Others questioned whether the practice reduced women to property passed between men. During the HIV/AIDS crisis in East Africa, wife inheritance became even more heavily debated. Health experts warned that unprotected ritual practices could contribute to the spread of disease. Churches and human rights organizations strongly opposed certain forms of inheritance. Meanwhile, many younger Luo generation began rejecting the practice entirely. Urban families increasingly adopted modern lifestyles where widows could independently support themselves. Yet, despite the criticism, some defenders of the tradition argued that outsiders misunderstood its original purpose. They claimed wife inheritance was never intended as exploitation, but as social protection during difficult times. Others pointed out that modern society often abandon widows emotionally and financially, while traditional systems at least ensured communal responsibility. Today, the practice exists in different forms. In some families, inheritance remains purely symbolic. In others, it has nearly disappeared altogether. Culture is rarely simple. Traditions are born from the realities of their time. What once protected communities may later face questions in a changing world. Among the Luos, wife inheritance was rooted in survival, lineage, spirituality, and responsibility. But modern generations continue to debate whether the practice still belongs in today's society. Some see heritage worth preserving, others see a tradition that must evolve. And perhaps the deeper question is not whether culture should disappear, but how it can adapt while preserving dignity, freedom, and human compassion. Because every tradition carries a story of fears, values, and hopes of the people who created it. What are your thoughts on Tero? Let me get your thoughts on the comment box. And please, if you like this kind of content, kindly subscribe to our channel. Thank you.